Hey everyone, we'll get going here in just a couple of minutes. I wanted to welcome everyone. I've been welcoming them in the chat thus far. Here it was a little frizzy. That's what I get for trimming. So, let's see here. I was out doing some yard work before we got started, so let me welcome everyone who's here. Hi to Kevin from Northwest Iowa. Hi to Dustin from Kentucky. He's actually kind of on the western edge of the state near Elizabethtown. Hi to Margie. Margie's one of my Church Tech U members, and she shows up a lot. So good to have you here, Margie. Also, hi to Sandy from South Carolina and Tiffany from Massachusetts. So, good crowd thus far. If you haven't said hi in the chat, go ahead and say hi. I don't know for sure. Well, I don't have a list of everyone who's here unless they say hi in the chat. So, if you could go ahead and do that. Just FYI, just so you know, the live streaming video and chat that are provided by Boxcast. Turns out that one of the guys at Boxcast is the uncle of the worship leader at my church. So he reached out and said, "Hey Paul, I've found your stuff online and you might know Austin because he's my nephew." I'm like, wow, small world. So anyway, good to have all of you. By the way, while I'm thinking about it, if you're looking at this and the picture is not a pristine 1080p, lower right hand corner there's a little gear icon. Change that to 1080p because that's what I'm sending out, and I've got a gigabit connection here, so you should be getting a pretty nice signal. Right now, not a lot to look at, but when we switch over to ProPresenter, that will be helpful. So, hi Denise from Maryland. Dustin says that he runs tech at Clarkson Community Church. Hi to Dave as well. Hi to Billy from New Jersey and Shirley from PA. Good representation of people from all over the U.S. We don't have anyone from California yet. Usually someone pops in from the West Coast, so I wouldn't be surprised if we got someone that way. So, okay, let me take a drink. We'll bring out the lower third, and then we'll get started. I mean, if you want to get started, if you're interested in going ahead and getting started, give me either a thumbs up emoji or say, yeah, I'm ready. There's Larry from California, Yuba City, California. PFC from Cleveland. Cleveland rocks. Cleveland rocks. Although I suppose it could be Cleveland, Tennessee, which is where my oldest went to college for a while. So anyway, let me go ahead and pull that out. Jintas from LaGrange Park, Illinois. Hi to you as well. So let's go ahead and get started, and we'll talk about what's new in ProPresenter 7.14. Hi to Chad from Green Valley, Arizona. We'll talk about what's new, and then I'll answer your questions. So, hi to Marlene from Atlanta, and Angelina from Stockton, California, second California person. Oh, PFC says Cleveland, Ohio, so I was right the first time. I always think of the Drew Carey Show and that song when I think of Cleveland. Okay, so let's head over to my computer and we'll take a look here. So Here we are in Pro 7.14. This is the beta. It's the latest beta that they have available. So I don't anticipate any problems, but you know, with betas, sometimes it's not as stable as it could be. So anyway, let me go ahead. I'm going to remove that countdown, and so that we can get going. So there are kind of three categories of new features in ProPresenter 7.14. We've got the live streaming and encoding features. We've got alpha channel enhancements, and number 3 is we've got something for the Windows folks exclusively. They did something similar for Mac a few versions ago, so now they're making things a little bit better, and I do see those thumbs up. So let me talk about this real quick, and we'll go from there. So first off, upper right hand corner where it says live, I'm going to click this. I'm not actually using this, I'm using a Boxcaster. Thanks to Boxcast for providing that. And then we go into capture settings, and the first thing that you should notice is the word preset up there. That is new in 7.14, and it enables you to have the ability to go between presets pretty easily. So I've got a recording only preset that I've made, and I also have a 720p preset. So you might imagine that if you take ProPresenter, let's say, to a campground, and you've got a retreat that you're doing there, and you don't want to take the whole live streaming rig and everything, but you've got ProPresenter, so you capture a camera into that and you live stream that back to those that couldn't make it to the retreat. So, but their internet is kind of bad. Well, you could have a capture that just does it in 720p here and be good to go. Set that up in advance, and then you can just select that preset. Well, what if you just want to record? You don't want to do anything else? Well, I've also made a recording preset right there. So it's really nice to be able to have some things set up in advance and just go through the appropriate ones, no matter what they are. So that's the first thing that they added in ProPresenter 7.14, presets. Next thing, if we go down here to encoding, you'll notice that in addition to the presets that existed before, I have added another one. So I've got 1080p 30 at 10 megabits. Not that I would necessarily recommend doing that, but it might be the case that you want to tweak something. So where it says custom encoding, you can click on that, and you can change the resolution up here. You can change the frames per second to any of these that you want. So let's say you wanted to do 24 frames a second, and you wanted to use a good high video bitrate. Then you could save that as well. And once you've done that, notice that we've got that as a custom encoding setting down here. So that's the second thing, is this custom encoding setting, which did not exist in 7.13 and older. So that's a cool little feature that they've added as well. As of 7.13 though, once you got everything set up, which you would have to do every time if things were different, to start the capture, really your only choice was clicking the Start Capture button right here. I mean, once you had it set up, you could also click up here and select Start Capture, but those were really your only two choices that were easy. In the ProPresenter 7 module for the Stream Deck, made by Elgato, there was a capture button. You could use that. So I guess that's the third way you could do it. But in 7.14, they've added a couple of additional ways to do it. So let's imagine, here, let me go back in here, and let's imagine that you have your pre-service loop of slides and everything, but then when you get to the first slide of worship, that's when you actually want to start the recording. So what you can do is right click on there, go down to action, and add action, and then down here where it says capture, select start capture, and you have multiple choices here. Active settings is if you haven't saved it as a preset, you can do that. In my example, I was saying you just wanted to record, so you could select the recording only capture setting, and then as soon as you click on that, that's going to start recording. So that's pretty cool. But you're going to have to do that same procedure every single week if you wanted to. So what if instead of just going right click, add action, go down to this and then select that, you could also go over here to macros, and I'm going to hide myself temporarily. Up here right underneath the M for macro in the upper right hand corner, there's a little plus button. Click on that and you could have a macro. Let's call this recording, and I'm going to right click and change the color just so that it'll be a little more obvious. Let's make it snow or white. There we go. And now I can right click and add those same actions, including the start capture action, and let's do recording only. Okay, so now instead of adding that manually there, I can drag that up here, and we'll see this M is for macro, and so that will behave exactly the same way, which is pretty cool. You can also, since it's a macro, it can have several things. So it could be that you also want to make sure that your look is correct, so you add another action for audience look and you want that to be there. So you can do multiple things with that. You can either, as I say, activate it by clicking on that slide or clicking on the macro directly. That'll do the exact same thing. And so if you've got several things to do, and by the way, you can reuse this, so next week when you're on a different song and you wanted to start it, you could do just like that. So that's something else to make your life a little bit easier, adding this recording action to a macro. One of my Church Tech U members, though, asked me a question. He's like, I foresee causing problems here. You've got that on the slide. What happens when before church starts, you're going through slides one last time just to make sure that everything's good, and you start the recording early, or you start the live stream early? How do you get around that problem? Well, I think Renewed Vision has solved that problem as well, and they've done so by enabling it for you to go to View and then Calendar right here. And so instead of starting it on a particular slide, you could start it at a particular time. So let me go ahead and I'm going to delete this event and all occurrences, just so that I can start from scratch. So let's click on this new event. This is clearly the last time I messed with it was a while back, so let's say there we go. So today's July 31st. Let's say I wanted to start it automatically at 9 p.m. As long as ProPresenter is running, I could have that set up. Now the question is, what do I do? Well, I could go to macros and I could click here to have that macro start, the recording macro that I just created earlier. The reason I might want to do that is because it had those two actions. But if I just wanted to just capture, I could just start the capture by selecting start capture and recording there, and then that way it would start capture right there. What you could also do is, if you know your church service is likely to end around a certain time, add 15 minutes to that and you could set it to stop the capture. I think though what I would do is I would probably I made this earlier right here. I just made a presentation right here that I called Stop Live, and then I disabled that particular slide so you wouldn't accidentally go to it. You have to actually click on it, and then you could right click and here, let me remove this action and add the action to stop the capture. And notice that I also have a choice to confirm before stopping. Maybe I know, hey, if I click on it, I absolutely want it to stop. Or maybe you just want to leave that just in case, so that it pops up and you can say, yes, I do in fact want it to stop capturing. So those are all the different settings there within that. Now, Margie asked a good question. She said, well, where is the recording stored? If you go up here, this isn't new in 7.14, but if we go up here and select capture settings, notice when you have the destination set to disk, it has a place save to, and in my case I've put it in the movies folder on my computer. But there's no reason why I couldn't save it to documents, desktop, or some other location. And when I select other location, then it gives me a pop-up window where I can navigate to other stuff. So say I wanted to save it to movies again, there we go, and then I just click open and that will be where it saves to. So good question, Margie. Now let me make sure there are no other questions. The other night I missed scrolling up in the chat. So that's all of the recording / encoding settings that they added in ProPresenter 7.14. If you're using ProPresenter 7 for that, recording and or live streaming, it's just a helpful little thing to be able to do all of those things, set the automation up ahead of time, and then you just don't have to worry about it. So that's one thing, one set of things that they added in ProPresenter 7.14. The second set of things that they added is related to alpha channels. So it's here. It's always a challenge when I teach this. I don't want to talk above anyone's head, and I don't want to talk down to anyone. and I try and walk that tightrope. So if you need clarification on anything I'm about to say, don't hesitate to say that. So let me head back to the computer and we'll talk about alpha. So if we go into screens and then configure screens, it used to be the case that any just regular HDMI output only had 1, 2, 3 of these tabs here. But you'll notice that now there is a 4th tab, the alpha key tab. I actually have this one. This is using a Decklink Duo card, so it's additional hardware that you can buy from Blackmagic Design. Since I'm on a Mac that's not a Mac Pro, I do need a box to put that card into to connect it with Thunderbolt. So this whole setup was about $750. So $500 for the card, another $250 for the box to put the card in. So that has stopped people from doing alpha in the past. So Dustin, I'll answer your question here in just a minute. So what they've done is made it possible to do alpha, not with an additional $750 investment. For some people more, for some people less, depending on your computer, as I say. So it could be $500, between $500 and a few thousand, depending on a couple of things. So instead of that, what if you could do 2 HDMI outs, just like if you had just 2 other monitors connected? Well, you can now. So going back up here, this one I have set to a placeholder, but that could be HDMI. The only reason I have it set to a placeholder is because this is actually the display that you're looking at right here on my computer. So that's why that is a placeholder. So we've got this regular output. It says Me TV. It's actually just an HDMI output. If we click on it, notice that it shows up in the computer. The operating system can see it as a regular output. And so I added that, and then I went over here to the alpha key choice here, and by default it is set to none. So for example, if I go down here to this output, you'll notice alpha key is set to none. That's the default. That means I do not want to use alpha with this particular output. But if I set it to straight or pre-multiplied, and we'll talk about that here in just a second, it enables me to add the second output that I need for alpha. So I've set that as a placeholder here for that. And so I've got my fill, which is kind of my regular signal, and then my key, which is the signal that a video switcher looks at, and based on what that looks like, it changes the fill signal to, on a pixel by pixel basis, either be solid black, totally transparent, or translucent, somewhere in the middle. So those are the choices. If you take a look at the key signal, it will look very much like the fill signal if it's a text-based box, for example. And how it will look is it will be a black and white version of that, and anything that is opaque, you can't see it. Any of those pixels, solid black. Any of the pixels that are transparent will be solid white. Any pixel that's somewhere in the middle will be some shade of gray. The darker the gray, the more transparent. The lighter the gray, closer to white, the more opaque it will be. And so the video switcher knows, okay, the fill signal, that is my base image, and then the key signal, that is the one that it looks at. So here, let me show you what those look like. So here we go. So I've got, this is from Amazing Grace, verse 3. Notice we've got a checkerboard pattern around here indicating that it's a transparent background, and I've got, you can see through this gray here to the checkerboard pattern, so that is translucent, and then this is solid white. Same thing for right here. So if I put that on, yep, so there you see it. My mouse is actually underneath it, but notice that I've got the solid white border. I've got, you can see the mouse underneath it right there because that is translucent, and we've got solid black around the letters as well. So that's showing solid white, solid black, and a translucent background. So now let me show you what those look like to my video switcher. So give me just a second to go there. Okay, so this is my fill signal. Notice that it kind of looks like that, only it's black, white, and gray. So it everything that's white is opaque, everything that's gray is translucent, everything that's white, or everything that's black, is transparent. So you might notice though that the letters are kind of puffier than the other signal. Here, let me show you the other signal. See the other signal? This is my fill signal. And the reason that the letters are puffier is because the white, the black outline is white in this particular one. See that? So what it's saying is, okay, I want the black outline to also be opaque. So I usually tell people that alpha is the best way of doing keying. Keying being overlaying one video signal on top of another. It's the best way to do it. And up until ProPresenter 7.14, it was also the most expensive way to do it. Now with 7.14, if you have an additional output of your computer, so a total of 2 that go to an audience screen, you can do alpha with those 2, even if they're just regular HDMI outputs. So that's, I think that's revolutionary. That's going to save a lot of churches a lot of money, and it might actually lower the amount of hardware that Blackmagic Design is selling to churches. So going back here, I do see your question, Elizabeth. We'll get to that here in just a second. So basically, having gone to the alpha tab and selected either straight or pre-multiplied, and chosen the other output, which I have a placeholder here, but I could just as easily have selected this other output here, this other HDMI output. Then we have those 2 signals that I can send into a video switcher and have the video switcher know what to do once I change a couple of settings in it. So, as I say, that's a game changer. The next thing that they have is the choice between straight and pre-multiplied. The difference between these are kind of how the blending is done. Pre-multiplied did have a... that was the default before, and the downside of what pre-multiplied had was that sometimes you get a little ghosting when you did a dissolve between two slides, for example. So most people didn't see it, but you know, if you do this, sometimes you start noticing the finer details. So I was in a tutorial I've got coming out, I actually did an A/B between straight and pre-multiplied, and I was having trouble seeing the difference, but it's still straight, according to Renewed Vision, is a little bit better way to do it. So that's why I have that set to that. So that's the other thing that we've got there. So going back to the chat, let me clarify some things here. So Dustin says, how do you keep the camera always visible? I think that you're talking about in my situation. So in my situation, what I'm using is a video switcher. I'm using a Blackmagic Design ATEM Television Studio HD, and that is an upstream key that is doing that. So I've got what's coming from ProPresenter and my camera, which is right ahead of me. You might notice that I occasionally look what looks like above your heads. That's because that's where the monitor I have with the chat on it is. So, so that's what I'm doing, is using a video switcher. It is possible to do in ProPresenter, and if we have time, I'll talk about that a little bit later. We call that a picture-in-picture, or PIP, by the way. So, Elizabeth asked, do HDMI alpha channels synchronize with each other as well as decklink outputs do? The answer is, if they're coming from the same computer, they're typically okay. Also depends on the video switcher. So I think when they added this, they were thinking of, for the ATEM mini line of switchers, which are all just HDMI. So so you've got the ATEM Mini, the ATEM Mini Pro, ATEM Mini Pro ISO, ATEM Mini Extreme, ATEM Mini Extreme ISO. I think that's all of them, but that line is all HDMI only video switchers. So while it was possible in the past to take the SDI from a deck link and run that into, for example, a SDI to HDMI converter, and then run that into that line of switchers, it was additional hardware that you really didn't need with that particular line of switchers. So the reason that I think that those work so well with HDMI is because they've got built-in frame sinks that do the synchronization based on what signal you have coming in. So if you've got both of those coming in from the same computer, they should be synced with one another, I believe. I'd have to do some testing to know this 100%, but they should be synced with one another fine. But when you add in a camera that is not synced, that's where in the old days we'd run into gin-lock problems. So with that line of switchers, though, they do the synchronization themselves. So, you know, just change when the the beginning of the frame is drawn. So I do want to say that I originally erroneously, and I fixed this in the tutorial that's coming out, I originally erroneously said that you could do one HDMI and one SDI. I guess you could still do those. I've done it. But the problem with doing that is that they may not be synced up. So you might run into just a little bit of ghosting when there's a dissolve. So that is the downside of doing that. So Elizabeth says, I just wanted to add that there are still other benefits to using a deck link. If you didn't already have one, if I didn't already have one in my church, I'd still want one. Yeah, I mean, a deck link does have a place to sync the deck link. Also, it's 4 outputs as opposed to just 2. Also, any of those outputs can be inputs as well, so you could capture into video signals and have those go into ProPresenter and then go out. And you can also do an external key with that. So if you're in a situation where you've got an ATEM Mini, which only has 4 outputs, well, what you could do is you could send the output of the HDMI of the ATEM Mini out, capture that into the deck link, and have the deck link do the keying on top. So there are advantages right there. So Dustin says, I was meeting in the live stream from, I'm going to guess, ProPresenter, not ProPresenter. So, speech to text. And he says that he uses NDI to OBS. That's another way to do alpha, by the way. And I'll continue on with the third thing that's Windows only here in just a second. I'm on a Mac, and I didn't boot into Windows for this, so I'll just be telling you about it, but it's important for you to know. Okay, so I don't think I've... Here, let me just add another NDI. So NDI, Network Device Interface, is created by the people that make the TriCaster, which is a computer-based video switcher. Well, it's become such a standard that they basically open sourced it. So if you need to send a signal from either one piece of software to another on the same computer or to a different computer, then NDI is a great way to do it because it can send that over the network. But let's say I added this 720p screen right here. Did see that blink a little bit. So it should be the case that it would allow me to do alpha. I'm not seeing that. Here, let me try one of these other settings here. Huh. Oh, I know why. Because I added it as a stage screen. Silly me. So let me delete that one, and I'm going to add it up here. There we go. Okay, so that did it. So I've got an NDI output here. I think I was using that for something else. Yep. So here, let me delete that, because this shows my point. So with NDI, since it's a virtual screen, just goes over the network, you don't need 2 hardware HDMI plugs or SDI cables. And look, you have the same 3 choices for this. So if I add change to straight. Notice I don't have to add additional hardware because NDI enables me to send that over the network or to other software on this same computer. On a Mac, you do have an additional possibility. It acts basically the same except without audio, but between two pieces of software on the same computer, there's another option called Siphon that works on the Mac side of things. And that can also have transparency on it as well. So those are the different ways. That's not new, but since Justin mentioned it, I did want to talk about it. So Elizabeth says, I was just about to ask about DirectX rendering. Guess what? DirectX rendering in beta is the last piece of the puzzle. So if you're on a Mac, this doesn't apply to you. They've already taken care of you. So a few versions ago, they added in a beta of Metal support, and Metal is the ability on a Mac to basically write instructions to the graphics. Well, it's not a card, it's the graphics chip on a Mac. I guess if you've got an Intel Mac still, then, like I do, then it could go to the graphics card. But to the graphics chip if you've got Apple Silicon Mac. So that's what Metal did. It basically made it more efficient to do graphics work. Well, Renewed Vision, they have, by the way, you might have heard some people say that, here, let me go here. You might have heard some people say, well, the Windows version is just ported. No, it's not. That is not true. That is a myth. The Windows version of ProPresenter is a complete rewrite that does the same stuff 99% as the Mac version of ProPresenter. They have two teams that work in parallel at all times to make sure that the features are about 99% the same. In fact, they're so similar that I have two issues. First off, I think I'm one of the few people that knows the difference between the two versions, other than the one runs on Windows and one runs on Mac. So there are a few little things, but in general, about 99% the same. The other issue I have, since I run the official ProPresenter users group on Facebook, is the occasional platform wars we have when people say, oh, a Mac is better, oh, Windows is better. They're all tools. It's whether you'd rather have a Craftsman or a Stanley hammer. Come on, I prefer my Mac, but that does not mean that you are absolutely going to get a bad experience with Windows. Now, if you buy the cheapo bargain basement Windows computer from Best Buy that's scratch and dent and was old when it came into the store 2 years ago, then you're going to have problems. That's absolutely the case. But if you get a good enough computer, they are very similar in their abilities, and DirectX is one of the things that will help push the Windows version to be even better. And so DirectX is just a way for Renewed Vision to get more efficient in creating graphics. So right now it's in beta. You might run into a graphics card that it doesn't like, or some other configuration that it doesn't like. So they do say, even once 7.14 is released, I believe I'm right on this, that it will in fact be in beta. So try it, see if it works for you. The latest version of DirectX is DirectX 12. They are using DirectX 11, and the reason for that is for the stuff that ProPresenter uses, there's no difference. There's some other stuff that ProPresenter doesn't use, and eventually they'll change to that, but right now 11 was just the best choice in that particular situation. So that is that. Let me head back over to the computer. I'm going to tell you about a little something, and then we'll come back and we'll answer some more questions, because we still do have a few minutes left. So if we head back to the computer, let me close that out. This is Church Tech U, my online church tech training community. Margie is a member of that, and apparently she just can't get enough of me, so she shows up to the free trainings that I throw out there from time to time, like this one, and the weekly live members only trainings where I'm going through everything in ProPresenter. I haven't even touched the basics of it, more of the advanced things, etc. in ProPresenter 7.14 and earlier, for that matter, today. So anyway, so if you went to churchtechU.com, notice it's CHURCHTECHU, short for university.com. You'll notice that right now it's $99.97 a month. That's your basic price. 30 days free trial, and that's a church-wide price. So that's not per person, that's per church. So, and by the way, this isn't like compared to price. No, I have people that are paying that price. So this is a legit price that people are paying. But, well, let me show you what's inside first. So this is the library. Notice that I've got several things in here, and one of them is my ProPresenter 7 courses. This is the most complete library of ProPresenter courses out there. I say that confidently because by an order of magnitude, I have more ProPresenter videos out there than anyone else. More than Renewed Vision, more than other paid services. There's a lot here, and that's part of why I have all these courses, because depending on where you're starting, where the members of your team are starting, they need to start at different places. So let's say you've got someone that all they do is they show up on a Sunday morning and they hit the space bar to follow along with lyrics. That's what the ProPresenter 7 Operators course is. If you're in the process of buying hardware to run ProPresenter, that's what the ProPresenter 7 Hardware course is. If you're the one that creates the presentations, the ProPresenter 7 Creation course, which is kind of an intermediate course, that's what that's for. Best practices. Sometimes people say, well, I do this, I do that. Well, let me tell you the best way to interact with ProPresenter so that you get the most out of it, as opposed to, well, I wanted to do this thing. Well, if you do it that way, you're going to have problems. So that's what the best practices is all about. Hacks, tips, and tricks. Some things that Renewed Vision may not have designed ProPresenter to do, but it can do. I'm actually going to be doing basically a live class on this in Louisville, Kentucky, which is about an hour and a half from where I live. It's actually where I grew up, in next week at the Wave Conference. Not next week, week after next, sorry. So that's some of the stuff you didn't know ProPresenter can do. ProPresenter for live streaming. Some of the stuff I covered today will be helpful for you in there. Troubleshooting, if you have problems with ProPresenter, here are some things that I've found. I used to do tech support, not for Renewed Vision, but in general my mind works that way. So some different tests that you can do to fix things. And ProPresenter major updates, including 7.14. So 7.14 has only been announced for like a week and a half, 2 weeks, something like that. And I've already got these 4 classes where people can watch them. Now I do release them slowly on YouTube, but those are the ones with commercials in them. Those are the ones where I try and get you to join the ProPresenter 7 Quick Start course, things like that. So this is actually the most time, it's the best way to save some time, is going through these courses within ChurchTechU. And so this is what it looks like. So I've got an overview, what's new in 7.14. That's kind of a little bit of what we talked about at first, and then each individual piece that we talked about today I go through, and these are all bite-sized. So this one is just shy of 8 minutes. This one also just shy of 8 minutes. This one was just 2 minutes, where I'm talking about DirectX. And alpha keying, that's a little bit longer, 7.5 minutes. So you'll notice that I'm showing a little bit of alpha right there. So, or that's actually the fill signal. So I also have a community. This is where we're dealing with stuff. I've got this that I'm going to be talking to him about. I thought that I had answered his question, so he put that in the welcome as well as the ProPresenter forum, because I've got different forums for that. And so that's a good place to interact with people that are where you are. Either maybe they're slightly ahead of you, or maybe they're a little behind you, but you can interact with one another, and that's where I hang out. So you're not going to get, oh, here's the answer that's wrong. It's one of the only things that I don't like about the ProPresenter community, is occasionally someone will put wrong information there, and I have to step up and correct it, and I hate it. I hate that there's wrong information out there. I want it to be just the most helpful thing out there. But this is a smaller community, so you can get, you're more likely to get the correct answers. So, as I say, normally $99.97 a month with the 30-day free trial, but for the next 6 days, 10 hours, 41 minutes, and 36 seconds, I'm going to do a 50% off sale. So if that's something that you find interesting, you can go to churchtechU.com/labor, short for Labor Day. This is the Labor Day sale, -23, and that will get you access to that. And you can join me, invite everyone in your church that you find interesting or interested, well, the interesting people too, and then we'll go from there. So let me go ahead. I'm going to paste this into the chat in case anyone's interested, and then we'll go back and talk about some more questions that you have. So let me go here. Okay, let me paste that here, and there's the link. So going back up here, okay, looks like we've got Daz here as well. So Daz says, we export our playlists on Thursday, rehearsal, and make updates to slides on Saturday for our Sunday services. Problem, import goes well. However, when we attempt to duplicate the imported playlist, i.e. two same names, one for in-house iMag, other for broadcast lower thirds, and rename the two slides, it still changes the original slide to lower thirds. Hope this makes sense. We need to have have items, one in-house and one on the broadcast slide. These are for song lyrics and Sunday. So, yeah, so my first question, Elizabeth asked something to clarify, and I'll look at that. My first question is this all one computer or two computers? If it's two computers, then I think I would use a theme to change the lower third one real quick to a full screen one. You might be doing two computers and have them network linked between the two of them using the feature in ProPresenter 7 where one computer can control the other. So that might be a possibility. If it's coming out of the same computer, then you can use looks, which is up here, upper right hand corner. You see it kind of looks like a disguise. Let's click on that and go to edit looks, and then let's say that this audience screen one is the one that is in person, and let's say that the alpha one is the one that is for your live stream, and you want a lower third on the live stream. Well, depending on how it looks here, so since this is a full screen version, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the one that I want to be different using a look here. So let me see here, maybe this one. So now same slide, when I go to alpha here, let me click on it. I don't think I actually saved it, so let me go to edit looks here. Yeah, I didn't save it, so save. I don't know why that's, oh, it's not even changing, so let's see here. Yeah, I told you that I was on a beta version. So let's see if that did it. No, not at all. So let me restart Pro 7, because for some reason that didn't change it. But so that's what I would do, and you could do that the opposite way, by the way. If you're bringing in the songs and it's a lower third version and you want it to be a full screen version, then in looks you can add a theme, which is all a theme is, remember, is a preset for the font, the position of the text box, the color of the font, things like that. Anything basically that you can save in the editor, it's like a preset. So you can have one screen that goes out lower third and another one that goes out full screen. So I hope that that clarified that for you. Here, let me put my vertical TV up at the same time. There we go. Okay, so let me head back over to the chat here. So Daz is saying, how do we prevent the duplicated item from being separately revised? So when you bring it in, it should say, do you want to duplicate? Do you want to use the existing one? Or do you want to create a new one? It seems like there's three, but 2 of those sounded right in my mind, so I might be forgetting that. So what I always do is, if I have made changes, then I say, oh yeah, overwrite. Then I want to overwrite that. So I think, if I'm understanding correctly, what you're trying to do is you're trying to have 2 separate ones that are separate in every way, and then they're playing at different times. And I think that that's a mistake. I think that using looks is the better way to go about doing that. So that's what I would advise for you to do in there. So let's see here. Elizabeth says that she's seen the slides not changing in Windows in 7.14, but this was the first 7.14 build that was released, not the most recent. So let me say that it could be, sometimes I run into issues that are the result of the fact that I use ProPresenter differently than most people. Most people do not go into screens, configure screens, and change things regularly. I do, because I'm showing people how to use it. So it could be that that's what caused it, because before I was making all those changes and all, then it seemed to be working fine for me. So it could be that that's what that was, is me tweaking things that most people don't tweak. But I will reach out to Renewed Vision, because, as it turns out, they want to know about stuff like that, because especially when it's still a beta, they want to fix it before it becomes the shipping version. So I will absolutely reach out from that. Dustin says, my only question that I have not figured out yet is how to keep the camera persistently on between slides. Okay, so I think it would depend on how you want to do it. So if the camera is like a picture-in-picture like I have here, like I said, I'm doing that with the video switcher. But if you don't have a video switcher, what you can do is, I think probably, I'm going to tell you the easiest way, and then we'll go from there. So the easiest way is to put it on the props layer. So let me hide myself here real quick, and I would click on the little props icon. Notice that that's like a stack. That's because props are a separate layer that is unaffected by the slides layer, which the slides presentation layer is underneath props. So I would click the plus button here, and notice that that's right there, and I'm just going to call it pip, just because that enables me to know what it is. Right click on it and select edit. Now I can add a click plus, and then let's just go down to video input, and let's change the input to one that I actually know is going to do what I want it to, and then I'm going to put it where I want it to be. So, and I'll stretch that to where it's approximately the size that I want it to be. I could also change the size here. So let's see here. 640 by 360, we'll make it about right. Okay, I'm going to put that right there, and then I go back to show mode here, and let's put up a here. I'm just going to select that. Okay, so that's showing up. Don't know exactly what's going on with that it's blinking. Probably something that was a previous tutorial. Here, I'll just select this because that'll be a little bit more obvious, right? Okay, now I can put the pip in right here, and notice we've got a live camera. I'm going to step over so that you can see the live camera. Say, hi, live camera. That is, in fact, from my, that's just my FaceTime camera on my computer. But that can be any camera that you can capture into ProPresenter. No big deal. And so now notice that I'm trying to select stuff I haven't added actions to. So notice how that video, I'm trying to get to where my hand can, so live camera, new slide, new slide, new slide. So there you go. So that's probably the easiest way to do it. A lot of people try and put it on the slide itself, and that's an okay way to do it, but it has to be on every single slide. So here, let me go ahead and clear out that prop so that goes away. So, and I've just noticed that I had yeah, so if I were to put that back in there, that looks a little bit better because that's formatted like this is. So, and I could also, by the way, here in, oh, look, see, I accidentally started the recording here. So I'm gonna stop that. So there you go, that's putting it on as a pip. If I wanted to instead put it on the slides layer, I would right click, go to edit slide. This is going to be a little bit more difficult. I'm going to put it over on the opposite side just so that we can know the difference. .640 by 360, bam. Okay, opposite side. So notice when I now select this slide, it should, unless I've locked it up again. Here, let me clear out the pip, which I can do by just clicking on it again. Oh, I think I know what happened. I'm not sure. That absolutely... Oh, I know what I did. Right click, edit slide. I didn't select the video input with the right camera. Silly me. So now, there we go. And that's live once again. So, but notice as soon as I go to this one, it will go away. So what I would need to do is I need to put that on that one as well. Easiest way to do that, right click, go down to themes, go down all the way to the bottom, new theme from selection. And just give that a name. And I'm going to select new version here. And now I can select all of them, right click, and go to theme. There we go, right there. And now you'll notice that when I select one and then I go to the next one, it stays up there. So those are two ways to do that. Yep, Elizabeth, I saw that. So, Dustin says, are you stunned what Paul just said? I might be immediately clearing it using my macros. Are you... speech recognition failure. So, yeah. And Elizabeth says, yeah, if you're using a clear all macro, then that would absolutely do it. So, yep. Okay, so looks like we're running out of questions. We've gone over a little bit. I don't want to go over too much because when I save it and compress it, I have to compress it more so that it fits on my website. They've got a 4 GB limit, which is about an hour the way that I compress this. So I'm going to go ahead and call it. If you have other questions, you can always email me, paul@trinitydigitalmedia.com, and I'll be happy to get back to you. If you're someone that wants to take advantage of my offer for Church Tech U, I would love to have you. Love to see you up in next Tuesday's class, and we can talk about stuff just like we did here, but every week as opposed to whenever I have these. So, yeah. So Dustin says that he thinks that he has a macro that's clearing off every single one, which that'll absolutely do it. So I hope that you found this helpful, and I hope that I'll see you inside Church Tech U. If not, I hope you learned something this past hour, and I'll talk to you all later. Bye.